that was My Cosmic Girl, a New Zealand artist. The name of the song, Floodlight. And you're listening to Control 99.4 FM with Dan. Not quite the orange eye yet, but I'm here early today, so you'll have me for 3 hours instead of two. I'll call that a good thing or a bad thing. That's yeah, hopefully it's a good thing, right? Okay, so I'm gonna start today with some news just past the hour. New Zealand news first, and then some global news, and then an insight on the ongoing conflict that's happening in Palestine. So here we go. Firstly, in New Zealand news, Tom Phillips shot dead. Fugitive father Tom Phillips was fatally shot by police in Waikato. His three missing children were found alive and are now in state care. A High Court injunction is blocking the release of traumatic details surrounding the case. And in Pacific Islands Forum, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon is in the Solomon Islands for the Pacific Islands Forum retreat. New Zealand pledged $20 million to the Pacific Resilience Facility and will host the 2027 summit. And there is an economic divide. New Zealand's rural economy is rebounding thanks to exports, while urban centres face high unemployment and cost of living pressures. And in global headlines, in the Israel-Palestine conflict, Israel launched a controversial airstrike in Doha in Qatar, targeting Hamas leaders. Qatar called it cowardly, and the UAE condemned it as a sovereignty breach. In Gaza, Israel is preparing a full-scale assault on Gaza City. Over 64,000 Palestinians have died since October 2023, and famine conditions are worsening. An Ozempic maker cuts jobs. Novo Nordisk is laying off 9,000 employees globally amid slowing sales of its obesity drugs. And Fiji has a tourism boost. Fiji secured its first one and only resort, that's the name of the resort, one and only, on Nakula Island, signaling a shift towards luxury tourism. And in sport, New Zealand, the All Blacks versus Springboks. A high-stakes test match is set for Eden Park. Injuries have forced last-minute squad changes, and coach Scott Robertson is under pressure. And the Black Ferns dominated Ireland 40-0 in the Women's Rugby World Cup, with teenage flyer Braxton Sorensen McGee scoring a hat-trick. And in soccer, the All Whites versus the Socceroos. New Zealand lost 1-0 in Canberra, but will seek revenge in Auckland this week. Chris Wood leads the line again. And the New Zealand Warriors set to face Penrith Panthers in the NRL playoffs, clashing with the All Blacks test match time. And Paul Cole retained his title at the London Squash Classic, defeating Joel Makin in straight sets. And in global sports, the FIFA Club World Cup, Chelsea won the 2025 tournament in the US. DAZN reported a record 2.7 billion global audience. And in the US Open tennis, Carlos Alcaraz claimed his second title, defeating Jannik Sinner. Ariana Sabalenka won the women's final. And NFL, the season opener, Buffalo Bills staged a dramatic 41-40 comeback against the Ravens. Josh Allen led the charge. And in the World Series of Darts, defending champ Luke Littler returns to Amsterdam, facing Simon Whitlock. The finals run from September 12 to 14. And we're going to cover the Israel-Palestine conflict as well, just with a bit of a deeper insight so everyone gets the full idea and the full story and understands exactly what is happening there. So there is a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. So there's an escalating Israeli offensive. Israel has issued what it calls a final warning to Gaza city residents, demanding evacuation or face a, quote, mighty hurricane of intensified airstrikes and ground operations. Over 1.3 million people remain trapped in Gaza City. That's 1.3 million people remain trapped in Gaza City, many of whom have already been displaced multiple times. Entire neighborhoods like Sheikh Radwan, Zaytun, and Shijaya have been bombed, and large swathes of the city are declared no-go zones. There is starvation being used as a weapon. The United Nations and humanitarian groups warn that famine is being weaponized. Over 500,000 people are in IPC Phase 5. That is the most severe stage of starvation or famine, or however you want to call it, defined by household level starvation. 39% of Gaza's population survives without food. More than 300,000 children under 5 suffer from acute malnutrition. And Gaza's agricultural system has collapsed. Over 67% of cropland and 95% of cattle have been destroyed. Safe zones, in quotes, under fire. Israel has directed civilians to flee to Al Mawasi, a coastal humanitarian zone, but aid agencies report that Al Mawasi itself has been repeatedly bombed. And the UN RWA chief Felipe Lazzarini described it as a vast camp, quote, concentrating hungry Palestinians in despair, end quote, with 800,000 people crammed into makeshift shelters. And there's a hostage crisis and ceasefire talks. Israel demands Hamas release 48 hostages or face total destruction of Gaza City. Hamas released a video showing 2 Israeli hostages, claiming others are also in Gaza City. The latest US ceasefire proposal, delivered by Donald Trump, is being reviewed by Hamas. It calls for immediate release of all hostages and a phased withdrawal of Israeli forces. And there are legal and ethical concerns. Amnesty International warns that Israel's actions may constitute a genocide and an unlawful forced displacement, violating international humanitarian law. The destruction of civilian infrastructure, including bakeries, mosques, and shelters, has compounded the crisis. So that's all we have for the news and sport and an insight into the conflict overseas. And now we'll have the weather. So today, right now, I'll just get an update. In Palmerston North, it is 13.2 degrees, feels like 13. Mainly fine with the chance of a shower until evening, then clouding over, westerlies easing in the evening. So that's the news on the hour or just past, and we'll have some music for you coming up. This song is by Saint Levant, and the name of the song is 5 a.m. in Paris. You're listening to Radio Control 99.4 FM. And we're back on Control 99.4 FM. That was Saint Levant, 5 a.m. in Paris. And we'll have some chats coming up after a bit of music. We're going to talk about some social issues today, some issues that are facing our country, and hopefully we'll aim to have a balanced argument and hopefully resolution or some kind of a chat about how we can resolve the issues that are facing Aotearoa. And yeah. Coming up, we'll have some music. This next one is called Baby. It's called Space Holiday, featuring Moody V or Moody 5. I don't know if that's a Roman numeral. So we'll just say it's Moody V. And then the artist is Baby Zianov, a New Zealand artist. You're listening to Radio Control 99.4 FM. And we're back on Control 99.4 FM, and as previously mentioned, we're going to talk about some social issues that we're facing in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So, firstly, we have climate vulnerability. We have rising sea levels, extreme weather, and environmental degradation that threaten coastal communities and agriculture. Infrastructure is under pressure, and resilience planning is lagging behind the pace of climate change. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to provide a balanced argument. So I'm gonna argue points for the fact that New Zealand is highly vulnerable, and then I'm going to make a counter argument that progress is being made and risks are manageable, and hopefully have some kind of a conclusion to cap it off. So the first side of the argument is that New Zealand is highly vulnerable and underprepared. This is for climate change, climate events, just anything to do with unexpected acts of God, as they call them, right? Okay, so here we are. So the first point for the argument is that there are rising hazards. So most New Zealanders expect climate hazards like floods, storms, and wildfires to grow in frequency and severity. Okay, and coastal cities such as South Dunedin and Napier are already experiencing sea level rise and storm surges. So when all this is happening, I think from my end, let's be mindful of our carbon consumption, or at least make one change if we can to lower our greenhouse gas emissions, or our yeah, just do one good thing to change change what you can, and this will no doubt have a monumental impact. I guarantee it. And there is infrastructure stress, so roads, drainage system, and housing in vulnerable areas are not built to withstand repeated climate shocks. And also, insurance premiums are rising, and some areas may become uninsurable if risks aren't reduced. So, to reduce these risks, we can either petition our governments, or we can make small changes ourselves. So there's two things we can do, right? And how about that? That's a good thing, right? Surely. Okay. And so the third point is that there is a public sentiment. So a majority of Kiwis want stronger government action, including nature-based solutions and resilient infrastructure. Only 25% of people believe central and local governments are doing a good job responding to climate risks. So, yeah, if we are really feeling this dispassionate about how our governments are doing, firstly, I would say look at our own behavior and let's see what we can change ourselves. We can recycle more, we can reuse more, we can reduce more. We know what we can do to lower our own impact, and this can have an effect on business. This can have an effect on communities and the ecosystem. And yeah, I think that's the wise way to look at things. And then when all else fails, we can say, well, we can express our disconcern for those in authority, right? Surely that's the way I like to see things. Take action first, and then the counter argument. Progress is being made and risks are manageable. So the government strategy, the New Zealand government has a 5-pillar climate strategy focused on resilience, clean energy, innovation, and nature-based solutions. So that is very heartening, and targets include doubling renewable energy by 2050 and installing 10,000 EV charging stations. So if we all jump on EVs, we will have less emissions, and I think that is a very good thing. If you ask me, EVs are the way to go if we want to get a hold on climate change or reducing our carbon emissions and heading in the right direction towards a sustainable future, right? So the second point, there is adaptation systems. A fair and enduring adaptation system is being developed to clarify costs and responsibilities. So whether this is some kind of sustainability reporting, I'm not sure, but I know that there are advances in the field of accounting, my own field of expertise, that being made in order to make sure that companies are actually taking accountability for their emissions and reporting on them in order to meet the needs of their stakeholders. And I believe that the stakeholders of companies is everyone really, because we all have to share our environment, and we are all really reliant on on everything. Otherwise, we're done for, right? Okay, and the emissions pricing and the emissions trading scheme are central tools to incentivize reductions. Yep, it's a tool, right? And while it's not perfect, at least it's a step. It's a step in the direction of somehow mitigating the total amount of carbon emissions. So while it has its critics, I believe it's still a good tool, right? Because if we didn't have it, we would probably have nothing, right? Okay, and economic balance, the third point. Critics argue that overreacting could harm economic growth, especially in agriculture and transport. So, yeah, I mean, this is true. I mean, at the end of the day, we all need petrol for our cars, and agriculture, we don't want to overregulate our farmers, otherwise we'll just be left with an endless reel of red tape, and no one wants to see that. I don't think we do. So some believe that climate resilience should be balanced with affordability and practicality rather than rush transformation. I disagree here. I believe that, in the words of Boris Johnson at the COP25, I think it was, the COP25, it could have been 24, it could have been 26, I'm not exactly sure, but he said that we literally, he didn't say literally, but he said we have minutes to midnight on the doomsday clock, right? And this is related to our economic and environmental situation. So if we don't make any action now, we are going to see the consequences, and we're already seeing sea levels rise in many places, and we're all seeing extremes in weather. So if we want to actually make some kind of a change, we should do it now. We shouldn't wait to make an assessment. I think it's very, very clear that there are already monumental changes that are happening in the environment. So the time to act is now, not in the future. So in summary, the debate hinges on urgency versus feasibility. One side sees a ticking clock and demands both bold action to protect lives, ecosystems, and infrastructure. The other emphasizes strategic pacing, economic stability, and leveraging innovation to adapt without panic. So there we go, and that's all I have to say about this first issue of climate vulnerability. And coming up, I'm going to play some more music for you. This next one is called Zain Haral Akhlaq, and it's by the artist, it's called Haral Akhlaq. Harir Akhlaq. I'm reading Arabic here, forgive me, and it is by the artist Zain. You're listening to Radio Control 99.4 FM. Stay tuned.
ناطحات سحاب بتدق عبواب السماء للسكن الأرض بتحديد. كيف وصلنا لهون؟ حبيبي بشوف تاريخنا بعيونك، والله يعينك على حيلك. بعرف إنه أنا أصعب من كده، وبعرف إنك حملت وزن مستقبلنا وماضينا أحداثنا، وقدر إنه المنطق يقول لو بياخدوا بلادك ما بياخدوا بلادك. بس حبيبي ليش كنت تريد خليها بالأرض؟
And that was Arir Akhlaq by Zayn on Control 99.4 FM, and we're back. So I'm going to talk about another social issue that we have here in New Zealand, and I'm going to argue for the point that that we have a cost of living and inflation issue here in New Zealand. So, firstly, 60% of New Zealanders identify inflation and rising costs as their top concern. Essentials like food, rent, and utilities are increasingly unaffordable, especially for low and middle income families. Food insecurity is rising sharply, with half of Pacific children reportedly going without food often or sometimes. So, here we go. Despite a modest drop in inflation to 2.7% in mid-2025, the real-world impact on households remains severe. The crisis is not just about numbers, it's about survival, dignity, and opportunity. So we have some evidence and analysis coming up for you on this issue of cost of living and inflation. So, firstly, there is widespread concern. A majority, 60% of New Zealanders, rank inflation and rising costs as their top concern. This reflects a deep cross-demographic anxiety that transcends political lines and income brackets. And yeah, that's quite a few people, right? So we're either not getting by or we're not doing the right thing with our wealth. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, to me, I definitely feel it. It's hard, and to everyone who is out there struggling, yeah, just keep at it, I guess, and we'll get through it. So the next point: essentials are unaffordable. Even with inflation cooling from its 2022 peak of 7.2%, prices for food, rent, and utilities remain stubbornly high. Yep, sounds good, sounds correct, and wage growth has not kept pace, especially for low and middle income earners. Many families are forced to choose between heating and eating. So, yeah, not good, right? And there is food insecurity, the most alarming indicator. Half of Pacific children reportedly go without food often or sometimes. This isn't just a statistic, it's a national embarrassment. Hunger in childhood leads to long-term health issues, poor educational outcomes, and entrenched poverty, right? Okay, and housing pressures. Rent prices have surged, especially in urban centers like Auckland and Wellington. Home ownership is increasingly out of reach for younger generations. Emergency housing waitlists are growing and overcrowding is rising in Māori and Pacifica communities. Okay, and we have a counterpoint here. So inflation is stabilizing. So yes, inflation has dropped from its highs. The CPI, Consumer Price Index, shows a return to near normal levels, but this masks the deeper issue, structural affordability. Stabilized inflation doesn't undo years of price hikes or fix stagnant wages, right? Okay, and to conclude, the cost of living crisis is not just economic, it's social, moral, and generational. It affects health, education, housing, and mental well-being. Addressing it requires more than interest rate tweaks. It demands bold policy, targeted support, and rethinking of what fairness looks like in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So that's all I have to say about that. If you have any comments, any questions, any queries, if you want to have a chat over the phone, or if you want to send in a message, the line is 06 350 4994, or if you want to text in, it's 022 350 4994. You're listening to Control 99.4 FM, and coming up we have Belladonna, a New Zealand artist, and the name of the song is St. David's. You're listening to Radio Control 99.4 FM. Stay tuned.